Okay. Commissioner of Police Acting, Mr. Irwin Boyce, Deputy Commissioner of Police, Mr. Ian Branch, all Assistant Commissioners of Police present, members of the police service, journalists, reporters, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. Welcome to the boardroom of Police Headquarters. You've been invited to attend and cover this press briefing, which was called by the Acting Commissioner of Police, Mr. Irwin Boyce, which will focus on recent serious criminal matters. The most recent of which I can give you a summary. Police at Black Rock Police Station this morning, sometime around 7:40 a.m., attended what was reported as a shooting incident, which occurred along Barbaries Hill, St. Michael, in the area of the traffic lights at Eagle Hall Junction. The brief circumstances are police received a report of a shooting where a man came from behind a PSV vehicle, namely a minibus, to the left side, while it was stationary at the traffic lights, and discharged a number of shots inside the said minibus. One male was injured, and he received an injury to his back. He was transported by a private motor car for medical attention. I would want to say to you, our investigations are continuing into this matter, and we are asking the public, as we often do, if they have witnessed or have knowledge of this incident, kindly call the Black Rock station at 417-7500 or 7501, police emergency at 211, or Crime Stoppers at 1-800-8477. Or the nearest police station. And we want to reassure you that all information received will be treated in the strictest of confidentiality. At this stage, I would want to hand over to Mr. Boyce, where he would, in fact, start the conference for this, the briefing for this afternoon. Commissioner Boyce, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Innes. I want to say I join with you in welcoming the members of the press to this particular press conference. I want to reiterate good evening, and I thank you, members of the press, for coming at such a short notice. The senior officers and I, and by extension the members of the Barbados Police Service, acknowledges that it is absolutely important that we speak to you, members of the press, and indeed Barbados, regarding what we consider to be matters that require our immediate attention and your engagement. We know that we have had a briefing at the beginning of the month, and we spoke to a number of troubling areas as we started out on our police agenda for the month of November, the youth season, and inclusive the tourism season. We told you then that our plans were predicated on robust policing strategies in critical areas, and that the members of the TBPS will ensure that Barbados remain a safe and peaceful place. That remains our resolve today. We have already set our strategies in place and have already begun to strengthen the areas that we believe that need our attention, and are shifting our focus on effective and results-oriented policing. And we are of the view that our policing strategies are not static. They are subject to change and subject to expansion. We have started some work in our communities and definitely will continue to do so. Of course, some of our strategies that are long-term, medium-term and long-term, will take some time to work. Nonetheless, we know that this particular engagement requires us to readjust our strategies and to bring to you what we are seeing and to share with you what we are doing. But we have noticed that notwithstanding our efforts, we remain confronted with the scourge of gun violence and the use of firearms, in particularly within recent times. We have seen young men embracing very rogue behaviors, and we have seen the loss of young lives and damage to vehicles and residences, injuries to persons, and in some instances, an increase in the fear to peaceful members of communities. We would admit that some of the people who die in these circumstances were familiar to us, police officers, and our system. But we understand that their families and their friends, their sisters, their brothers mourn their loss, and it will be a great loss to them. And we also know that persons who are committing these acts come from families, live at people, have brothers and sisters, have friends and families, and hence we need to pursue them with the kind of robustness and vigor that is absolutely necessary. As I said, we have seen senseless killings, and this is coupled with a growing disrespect for law and order, and certainly that is not what I understand Barbados is all about, and that does not represent the majority of Barbadians as far as I know. We have seen targeted fatal shootings and access to illicit firearms, which in my mind is unprecedented at this time. This is not our culture, this is not our society. And we believe that there are no bad boys out there. We believe that as far as we are concerned, that if you break the law, you face the system. Let me say that the Barbados Police Service will not tolerate any behavior and will bring the strongest arm to end or eliminate the use of firearms and violence in our society. We are purposefully resolved to bring this to an end, and I speak for every member of the Barbados Police Force, Police Service. Violence is not part of our society and will never be. The Achilles heels approach will ensure that there will be zero tolerance to gun and gun-related matters. And we will be pursuing all offenses, however small they are. We want you to rest assured that we are targeting the criminal activity with vigor and relentlessly and at every level, and working in communities with those affected by the scourge of violence and unscrupulous behavior. We know that it is certainly not part of us to wake up almost daily and to hear on news items that there was another shooting, or read in a newspaper that there was another shooting in a community. That is not what we are about. That is not what we are accustomed to. It is not part of us to accept that there are gangs, people who have their own way of doing things, and the use of illicit firearms and serious organized crime and controlled drugs have, to some extent, now seem to have taken on a new complexion and has become part of the new culture in Barbados, or the new subculture in Barbados. Let me reiterate that Barbados Police Service will not tolerate any form of this wicked problem, and will use every partnership, every relationship, every collaboration to ensure that our people enjoy their freedom. I believe, too, that given our history and our resolve to be law-abiding society, our indefatigable resource will have the full support of the people. I believe that strongly. I urge that you continue to share with us, members of the public, your concerns. Share with us your information and support, and remember that there is a mantra that we normally recite at these conferences. If you see something, say something. If you don't know somebody in the system, or if you don't want to call a number, there's always the commissioner's office, there's always the deputies, there are always the ACs, the assistant commissioners. We have to work toward ourselves. And when I say we, I'm looking at the combination of police and members of the public, the NGOs, government department. We have to work together to rid ourselves of the incorrigible men and women who are parading or who are beginning to parade in our society and are acting as though they are the law unto themselves. Our approach is a whole police approach. That is, we are committed as all of our stations, 14, 15 stations or formation that we have committed to ensure that each community within the station district remains a station where freedom and where safeness and security remains paramount. Because it's a whole policing approach, we purpose our traffic unit to intensify and mobilize their road policing activity. We realize that there's a mobility in criminal activity, so hence we are putting a lot of emphasis on our road policing strategies. And we will continue to accelerate those strategies on a daily basis. Our community engagement will continue. We look at our community engagement over the last couple of days and look to see where we can bring communities closer to us, or we take ourselves closer to communities to enable communities to remain safe. And obviously, our tactics and law enforcement efforts will be maintained in earnest. It's not for me to go into the details of our tactics and law enforcement strategies, but rest assured that they will remain in earnest and they will target those persons who are not only the troubled-trees, but who have association that can create some challenges for our society. Prevention, suppression, and intervention are all part of the measures that we are using. And our frontline policing and our tactics will remain firm, and we will remain fair. Over the next 8-9 months or so, we will remain fair and we will remain firm. We will start out this scourge. And I want to reemphasize the fact that TBPS remains committed to ensure that there is a safe and free society, and that all the democratic events should not in any way be hampered by a few so not be hampered by a few ill-informed persons or incorrigible roles, if you want to call them that. Now, it's important that we reemphasize that we need the assistance of members of the public. There's no doubt about that. And admittedly, I would want to say that we have been getting some assistance from members of the public, but we need to have more assistance. One of the things that I've charged my assistant commissioner with is to solve those matters that are before us. Solve those matters that are before us as hastily as can be. Collect the evidence and make sure that we put persons before the court. I think this is one of the prevention and approach that we will be adopting as we go forward. At this point in time, I would want to engage any further questions on any of the issues.
Yes, Commissioner. Colville Munzi from. Share this one, right? Yes, Commissioner Boyce, Colville Muncy from Nation News. Now, part of your remarks that stood out to me very poignantly, and I quote, access to firearms at an unprecedented level. The first thing that comes to mind is how. Are we seeing a greater inflows of firearms into Barbados? Why is there greater access at this point?
For sure, Barbados is not a manufacturer of firearms, first of all. And you would have recognized that in recent times we have had a significant fine at one of our ports of entry. And that is significant because you're not talking about one or two firearms, you're talking about 38 firearms at our port of entry. And we are not manufacturers of firearms. What we have found, though, is that notwithstanding the collaboration we have with our critical partners at port of entries, we are now beginning to see on our streets firearms that are not wanted guns. When I say wanted guns, firearms that are not doing one or two or three hits at one time. So that would indicate to us that there is on island, there is access to firearms that over time is now reaching the hands of some very young and reckless men. So in essence, in terms of answering your question, yes, we are seeing firearms and as I said, we are not seeing wanted guns, so to speak, and I know that was something one of my colleagues raised, and one of my colleagues raised in one of the region, that there are some wanted guns that are shared within a particular jurisdiction. But we are not seeing that type of we are not getting that type of results or information in our analysis. So we do believe that there are a number or is a number of firearms out there that we have not touched the surface as yet.
So, just to be clear, you're saying that these are basically new firearms?
From our, I'm not saying new firearms. I don't want to really use the word new, but I'm saying that firearms that would not have come to attention before.
Just been introduced to the system, basically.
No, I'm not saying that they might have been in the system before, but because we are not seeing them, or we have not come across them before, we are saying that they are out there in the wider society.
Yeah. Emmanuel Joseph from Barbados today. I project my voice. So. Sorry about that. Emmanuel Joseph from Barbados today. So the guns are on the street. We accept that. So what is being done to ensure that you get as many guns from off the street as possible? For example, there was a time when there was the random search, stop and search, for example. Do you think that this is something that can be done to get at these guns?
I would be one, Mr. Joseph, to admit that you have not been moving around a lot. You have not been following the street life a lot, because if you were on the streets, you would see that our officers are doing a lot of checks, random checks, a lot of vehicle checks, a lot of community checks. So we are in relation to that strategy, very focused. And I can tell you, I think last week or this week, we recovered a MAT 10. And we have been recovering firearms. And if I were to just reflect on the stats that we have had up until Monday, we would have recovered over 127 firearms. We would have recovered 127 firearms today, and this is far surpassing the amount that we recovered last year. I think last year, up to this time, we had 79 or something like that.
That's as a result of the stop and search.
A result of concentrated effort, intelligence, stop and search, home warrants, and those other things.
So just to get back at the ports of entry, because as we acknowledge, we don't manufacture weapons here. How significant a breakthrough are you making in terms of guns coming into Barbados through our legal ports of entry and the not legal ports of entry?
We have really strengthened the relationship. We have really collaborated with our partners in the ports. And I know that the ports have undertaken some tremendous expansion in terms of their capacity to find contraband. And I would want to say too that there is that level of continuous relationship, intimate exchanges that allow us to work with our partners, encourage our partners to create the levels of vigilance, and to bring to our responses some degree of success. So we are working with our partners, and I assure you that the partners are on board with us.
Ricardo Roberts from Stockholm Network. With regards to the port, I know just recently you all got a bit of attachment of guns recently. Have you made any headway as far as the investigations concerning that? Any arrests made? Can you give us an update on that?
Well, what I can say, the investigation is very, very, very active, and it's not a narrow investigation. It's a very expansive one. And while we are working feverishly and continuously we have to work with partners in order to respond to the entire situation. So I'm saying that yes, the investigation is continue, and it will continue, and it is really embracing a number of partners. So at this point in time, it is very active, and I wouldn't want to go into any details as relating to it.
Commissioner, I asked this question once before, and I think I got a roundabout answer. So I'm going to be very direct this time. Are we in a gang war, at the middle of a gang war at this point, given the brazen nature of the shootings that we are seeing?
And I would probably ask you what you mean by gang war.
Gangs warring against each other.
What we are finding from our intelligence, what we are finding from our investigation, that there are individuals within blocks and groups, and if you want to call them gangs, that are responding to personal issues in some instances. And they have beef with, and they're targeting the person with whom they have the beef. And that's what we are finding. We are not in the business of glamorizing gangs. We are not in the business of glamorizing groups that are designed to upset the status quo in society. So that's why I would not say that there is a gang warfare. What I can say is that yes, there are people within the groups that we identify through our investigation, through our intelligence, that have particular targets. And some of those are not necessarily starting with targets in communities. You can start with targets from prison, from interaction in prison.
And also, Commissioner, what's the solve rate? Because we've had quite a few gun-related shootings this year. What's the solve rate at this point?
We're just under 60% of all the murders. We have 38 murders for the year so far, and 29 were committed or firearm enabled. And we have solved, in essence, about 18 or 19 matters. I don't have the exact, either 18 or 19 matters. So we're about 50% if we were to look at percentage as a minimum.
Just following on from that, because last time Mr. Griffith would have given us 24 persons or accidentally 35 murders. Do you have updated numbers, sir?
I did not work with the updated number,
No problem.
but I know for sure that we would have solved but that is not a gun-related matter. That is a matter on Welch's, the cutting up death on Welch's in Christchurch.
If the police, since the police are aware and they can identify these, you don't want to call them gangs for whatever reason, why aren't you breaking up these people? Why aren't you breaking up these lawless groups that are killing young men?
Again, I would suggest that if you were to have a look in on what we do on a daily basis, you will see that we bring quite a few people into custody. We break up the groups. So I am not. There's no inaction as it relates to group infiltration. We are breaking up groups.
With regards to the rumored, it is a rumor actually, shooting at the QH, was there any arrests made? Because the report on the ground was someone was coming to finish the job on one of a person. Was any arrest made concerning that incident?
What you said in terms of the shooting at QH, that was not our information. That was not reported to us. That was unsubstantiated in every sense of the word. Obviously, the entire investigation extends beyond the QH. QH is the hospital where trauma care and E is. So therefore, you're going to get people who are shot coming to the QH, and it is. The whole episode is a bigger investigation, and that is being pursued with a degree of vigilance and a degree of diligence at this time.
Oh, so you can't say no one was.
No, I will not go into the intricacies of the investigation at this time.
Do you maintain that the police still have this situation under control?
Yes, I would be the first to say yes. We know what we're doing. And as we want to reassure people that we are on top of the situation as far as creating the strategies to create the platform for a safe Barbados.
But that's not the perception on the street. That is certainly not the perception when you're having people dying almost every day in recent weeks as a result of shootings. That does not perceive to be under control. What would you else, because you've been saying this for a while, what else can you say to convince people that it's under control? You think people are convinced?
One of the things about crime and the investigation of crime and the whole policing of crime is that it is not a silo activity for police officer. It's an activity that requires every member of society, every law-abiding member of society, every corporate entity, every NGO, every government department, every church, every community, and every family to be part of the solution. Police do not have a silver bullet. in relation to the crime, we need to have that level of buy-in. We need to have that level of support. We need to for families. If you recall, in my opening, I said those that pass have families. I also said that those who are doing this thing have families. So therefore, we need to get to the families and allow for a wholesome approach to solving these matters or to getting these social ills manageable within society. And I think fundamentally, if we continue to think, oh, the police is supposed to do this and the police is supposed to do that, and you as a member of the community, you as a journalist, you as part of the wider society are not contributing, then you will always have perceptions. And one thing about the police organization is that we listen. We hear, we listen, we understand criticisms, we understand when we adjust our strategies, we understand when we need to be out there in your face to allow you to feel safe. That's all the ethos of policing.
Commissioner, final question from me. And I'm going back to the issue of guns and their entry into Barbados. Now, the government has invested heavily in scanners at the ports of entry, etc. And if based on what we are understanding, that guns are still coming through, I mean, what are the variables, apart from security, which has been tightened, that now still exists for these guns, that would allow for these guns to pass through?
One of the things in the chain is as strong as its weakest link. And sometimes the weakest link is the human being.
Okay.
And unless the human being come to a realization that the technology, the scanners are only going to do what they want them to do and to get the results that we want, then we will always be challenged.
So you're saying there's a human element that might be...
There must be a human element that influencing some of the movements.
Corruption? I'm asking bluntly, sir.
No answer.
You gotta give me a definition of corruption.
No, sir, I can't.
Because I can give you my legal definition of corruption, but what I'm actually saying is, as I said, the chain is as strong as its weakest link, and if the weakest link is in the human capacity, then you're going to get some trouble. Because, as I said, don't care how much scanners, how much technology, how and a person is bent on doing a particular act to circumvent the system, then he will do the act and he will get through. So that's something that is quite evident in
You've said enough, sir.
yeah.
Every time we come here, we talk about a whole of country approach. We always talk about the fact that you need to work with the churches, you need to work with the businesses, you need to work with the families. What is actually being done to do that? We know we had the outpost that was introduced into the ID, but what are the police actually doing to get into the churches and stuff? When we had the outbreak in St. Philip, I remember we had seminars on different Sundays in St. Philip. What is actually being done now?
We continue our drive to be inclusive in terms of sharing our policing strategy. You've got a lot of organizations that are self-starters. Organizations like the church is a self-starter. Organizations like some NGOs and organizations within communities are self-starters. So while we can facilitate programs, or while we can be there to give a view and to give guidance, it is for the community to enhance their presence by participating at the level that is required. That is to create the leadership in terms of the whole of Barbados policing approach engagement.
Okay, and what kind of results are you seeing from the outpost and the ID so far?
Well, if you were to judge by the absence of crime, then it would have been very, very, very successful. If you were to judge by the engagement of the people, then we would have been, yes, over 50% because we are engaging. We are not only in the caravan, we are engaging. If you are to judge by the calmness in the environment, then yeah, there's some light at the end of the tunnel.
If you had to put your finger on the biggest challenge in the way of the police is getting these crimes dealt with or resolved or prevented, what would you say that would be?
The biggest challenge for, again, let me retract and say policing is predicated on intelligence, the collection of information, the support of members of the society. Any challenges that emerge as a result of the inability to get information, the inability to have society on our side or on the side of democracy, so to speak, then that, in my mind, would be the biggest challenge. For us, it is getting the information into the system and getting the information that produces the elements that are required for evidence, and that can in itself be a challenge.
Would you factor in people in a school of thought that they're big boys, they're people who are untouchable? Is that factored into that process of challenge?
Absolutely not. There's no untouchable person in Barbados. Again, you've got to give me a definition for untouchableness. And perhaps tell me who you consider to be untouchable. There's no untouchable person in Barbados. We will, as a police organization, mandated, as a primary police organization, mandated to ensure safety and peace in society, will pursue any area of concern, illicit activity that we know and that is reported to us and that we can deal with effectively.
Commissioner, I'm glad that you mentioned information. When we met 2 weeks ago, you mentioned that investigation was open as it relates to the leaking of sensitive information. Can you give an update on that investigation?
The matter is still very active on the investigation. So again, I can't be detailed in giving you the update, but I know for sure because I've had a debrief on it as recent as last week on where we're at with that investigation, but it's very active.
Obviously, with the leaking of such information, it does create somewhat of a distrust with the public and the Barbados Police Service. What can you say about that?
Yeah, we recognize that the social media concerns, and we recognize the concerns of people generally, that particular set of information reached members of the public, and it was not supposed to be reaching the members of the public at that time in that form. It probably would reach the members of the public when the matter goes to court and is heard, but it was not that what we call a no press. It was a no press matter, in that it would not be available to members of the public. It would not be available to members of the press. So, yes, we do believe that has had some effect on how people understand levels of trust. But I want to emphasize that we have core values, and within the core values of the organization, trust is one of the core values. The issue of confidentiality is also one of our core values. And as I rightly observed, that any movement away from the principles and the core values of the organization will result in serious action.
Okay, I just have one final question. just like how for election time and stuff, you would suspend vacations or anything like that for the police officers. Now that we are to a place of the possibility of innocent bystanders being impacted by this gun crime, when we look at what would have happened after the Lord's Hill incident, when we look at the bus incident this morning in Eagle Hall, are we moving towards this in terms of stepping up the policing?
One thing I can say that I've had a meeting with the force in general, I think it was on the 1st of November, and it was to introduce our policing strategies to the wider force and to solicit their support to the extent that they want to give additional hours to the organization. And the feedback from the meeting and the feedback from the ACs and from the divisional heads is that we are reaching that level of capacity, we are reaching the level of support. And at this point in time, we have not considered that we are in a situation that we need to restrict leave, but we are in a situation where every hand on deck is an important hand. And I'm absolutely sure that that the men and women of the Barbados Police Service will commit themselves to giving Barbados the best police service for the next 6-8 weeks or so.
Are you seeking outside help to help strengthen the police arms in dealing with the crimes?
I am thinking that you're speaking to internal outside help.
Outside of Barbados?
I am not. I'm not sure why we would want to do that at this point in time. Yeah, I don't know why we would want to do that, because we are quite capable of meeting the needs of the investigation. And certainly the investigation, while it may be calling for tenacity and purpose, is done, or the investigations are done by people who are really committed and know what they are doing and are trained to deliver the results.
Okay, Commissioner, I think everyone has exhausted their question. You represented at least 6 or 7 media houses here. And Commissioner, sir, we want to thank you at this stage for obviously inviting us and hosting and answering the whole series of questions. And that would bring an end to our live press conference at this stage. I would want to thank the journalists and the reporters for coming at such late notice, and I know that you've asked the questions for the public, and you've gotten some really good answers for that. We continue to look forward to working with you as we have been in partnership as usual. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Because it's a corruption.